Traveling together soon. Sons of UT.
How are you? Are you dad today or she's
Good morning, everyone. I'm proud to welcome you to the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation's 22nd Annual Professional Advisor Seminar. I'm Ira Silverman. I'm chairman of the Professional Advisory Committee. Without taking time to acknowledge the many notable guests we have here, I do want to at least recognize Judge Lincoln Monroe, one of our probate court judges. Thank you for being here. I also want to thank our sponsors, those in the seminar notebook that you have, and especially Meadows, Collier, Reed, Cousins, Crouch, and Ungerman, our primary sponsor, and then also our 3 platinum sponsors, Morgan Stanley, Thompson Knight, and Tollison Wealth Management. And last but not least, I need to thank the Foundation's Mona Allen and her staff for organizing the seminar. They've done a great job every year, and I know many of you have been here in the past. Just a few more items before we get to the program. There's going to be a 10-minute break at 9 o'clock. And we're going to conclude the seminar crisply at 10:15, at which time there'll be a drawing for a weekend night stay at the Westin. Your continuing education certificates, you'll be getting something online today. You don't need to have signed up outside unless you're looking for CLU credit. And if you would just turn off your cell phones. And if any of you are wondering about the cigars that you'll find on the table, our chairman, Rusty Cooper, who has a few words to say, will, I think, enlighten you.
That's it. Ira, thank you very much. Let's hear it for Ira. Ira's been head of this committee and of this seminar for many, many years. A fantastic job. Thank you. Good morning. Great to see you all here again, and thank you for coming. We've got a wonderful program today, so I'm going to keep my comments fairly short. Feeling really great this morning as we celebrate a new birth into the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation family. That's right, today we announced the birth of a new foundation, the Southwest Community Foundation. Southwest Community Foundation is a DBA of the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. I repeat, we now have 2 names under the one umbrella of the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation that can serve your clients depending on what works best for them. Staffed by the same people that you have known to love and trust, and we can meet your needs with either hat. Our new baby has been born with the same 45-year history, the same commitment to customer service, the same dedication to philanthropy and helping others. With both names, we've achieved many milestones this year, some of which we'll talk about later this morning. I'm happy to share that we have just reached the $200 million mile mark of assets under management and $270 million in testamentary gifts. So I feel like a very proud father. Our newest child, the Southwest Community Foundation, and its big sibling, the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. Two brands with the same mission to assist you and your clients with philanthropic passion. If you want any more information on how the new Community Foundation name works, ask any of our professionals or those of us on the executive committee. Happy to help get more information. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Josh Ungerman, partner at Meadows, Collier, Reed, Cousins, Crouch, and Ungerman, LLP, our lead sponsor this morning. Josh's practice includes estate planning, family wealth preservation, transfer strategies. Josh is also a CPA, is involved with IRS controversy matters, and defends taxpayers' issues against IRS inquiries and actions. We're proud that Josh is a member of the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation Board of Trustees, so help me welcome Josh to the podium.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody coming. What's happening at the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation is just truly fantastic. I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's no other place I could send my clients and get such wonderful service. And every time they come back, they're just going on and on about how wonderful everybody is, how professional, how nice. And so thank you to the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. You've made me look really good for those clients. I had the honor, and I'm so lucky to introduce today Chris Erblich. We've had him here before. He concentrates his practice in very sophisticated estate planning, business succession planning, tax planning for high net worth clients and business owners. That sound familiar to a few people in this room? This is exactly what we want to hear about. He is frequently sought out by professional advisors to develop creative planning solutions for complex situations. He has a nationwide practice. I'm going to brag on him for a minute. He has clients in more than 20 states, a number who are on the Forbes 400 list. He has extensive experience in federal transfer taxation, various income tax and estate planning techniques. And Chris provides ongoing business consulting and guidance to many families and family businesses. As we all know, that's so invaluable and so important. He's been published extensively. While we've reached the $200 million mark of assets under management, Chris is well over the 100 mark as far as presentations he gives nationwide. He gets into professional advisors like this group, business owners, high net worth families, family offices. We've been so fortunate to have Chris here before. We're glad to have him back. Chris also is a very big St. Louis Cardinals fan, and he wants everybody to know who is watching the World Series that as 2011, the St. Louis Cardinals are in the World Series this year. Anything the contrary is fake news. With that, I'm going to introduce Chris. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. Again, how I do wish the Cardinals were in the World Series this year. That'd be wonderful. So, just a quick remark before we get started. So I am fortunate enough to speak around the country to many groups like this, and it is truly extraordinary to see the level of participation that you all have. And the job that the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation does. I travel with it, and I speak at many of these, and the organization that you have really does stand out. So, a round of applause for the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. planning in uncertain times. So somebody mentioned to me before I got started this morning, isn't it always uncertain? I said, I think it is always uncertain. But holy cow, you couldn't make this up. Right? If this were a Hollywood movie, I don't think people would believe it. And sometimes I wake up in the morning and I don't quite believe it myself. So what I thought we'd do today is we got to talk a little bit about tax reform. Now, the truth is nobody on the face of the earth has any idea, one, whether tax reform is actually going to happen, and number two, what it would actually be. But we should at least talk about what the possibilities are. First, on the income tax side, President Trump in April of 2017 made a proposal, and essentially he was trying to reduce the number of rates, lower the rates, eliminate the AMT, eliminate the Obamacare tax. Apparently that isn't going to happen. Double the standard deduction. Now, the Republicans had something that they called the better way that was really similar to what he was proposing. The rates were just a little bit different. And now they've come out with something called the Unified Framework. I don't know if any of you have ever read the Unified Framework. I have it here. It's 9 pages, which in and of itself is kind of interesting. So reforming the entire tax code, and so what we know right now is 9 pages of information. So a little bit difficult to figure out what's going to happen. Just yesterday, the House passed the budget 216 to 212, which is an important procedural move. But they lost a number of Republicans in the vote, which means that the prospects of tax reform are perilous. Who knows whether it's actually going to happen or not? Nonetheless, this is what the Unified Framework said. 12% rate, 25% rate, 35% rate, and then some other features that are important. Increasing the standard deduction from $12,700 to $24,000. A larger child tax credit. I like that, larger. How much larger? We don't know. Senator Rubio would like it to be much larger. Others would like it not as large. So soon we will find out how large it is proposed to be. They've proposed eliminating the AMT. The second bullet point here, eliminating itemized deductions except mortgage interest and charitable contributions. States with high state income taxes, New York, New Jersey, California, absolutely in a high-speed wobble over this, right? As you can imagine, if they were to eliminate the state and local income tax deduction, that would have a massive effect in states like that, which some Republicans want and some Republicans don't want. So who knows if that's actually going to happen? A number of the representatives in New York and New Jersey just yesterday didn't vote for the Republican proposal because of this. Settlement on capital gains and Obamacare taxes. This is the next slide. Assuming the slide got it with us. Yeah, there we go. Will be significant, and that is they're trying to change the pass-through income tax rate to 25%, the C-Corp rate to 20%, and some immediate expensing of new investments, depreciable assets, maybe a partial limit on interest expense. The truth is, we don't really know what they're proposing, other than a few basic things. Here's what I think we know. Directionally, fewer brackets. How many? Well, 3, unless there's 4. Lower rates. How much lower? Lower than now, but we don't exactly know how much lower. Reduced deductions, which ones? Right. Simplification. Sounds simple. Right? So, it's impossible to talk about estate plans in uncertain times without at least mentioning this. Honestly, again, no one really knows whether tax reform is going to pass or what exactly it's going to look like. If it does look like something, it will probably involve those changes. One of the other things that's just unusual is, or maybe it's usual these days, I don't know, is we're in a place where they're going to actually show us the words of what the legislation will say sometime in the next week or two. And then they have about 22 days to get through and vote. Major tax reform, 22 days. Major tax reform. platform 22 days. You see the legislation for 22 days? Unusual times, for sure. Let's talk about the transfer tax system. As you know, we got a $5.49 million gift and a state tax exemption, same with generations giving exemption, 40% rate. In big news, this is going to $5.6 million next year, and the annual exclusion is going up from $14,000 to $15,000. One of the things that always blows me away with the estate and gift tax is the number of taxpayers this actually affects is quite small. So in 2015, this is the last full statistics we know, 11,917 estate tax returns filed. 4,918 of them were taxable. So there's about 325 million people in the country. I'm not great at math, but that's not a lot, right? The percentage that file estate tax returns. 17.1 billion of estate tax collected out of 2.9 trillion of revenue. And under 300 families paid 7.4 billion of it. So estate taxes accounted for about 0.59% of the total revenue. Now, it's interesting because the president has proposed, both when he campaigned, repealing the death tax or estate tax. Unclear on the gift tax when he was campaigning. The Better Way Republican proposal also said repeal the estate tax, didn't say anything about the gift tax. Basis step up wasn't mentioned. Now, the House and the Senate actually did introduce some legislation in 2017, repealing the estate and gift tax, repealing the estate GST tax, keeping the gift tax, maintaining current exemptions and annual exclusions, 35% top rate. And the unified framework, in all 9 pages, says, hey, let's repeal the estate and GST tax. Doesn't mention any changes to the basis rule, so I assume that means we keep a step up in basis. No mention of repealing the gift tax or any indication of rate. One other quick point before we move into some case studies. You know, is the tax rate really 40%? So, yeah, it is. But it really isn't. Because if you think about the techniques we use to do estate planning, whether it's discounting, whether it's using our exemptions, whether it's this notion that you can kind of put your hand on a Bible and say, this trust is not me for estate taxes. This trust is me for income taxes. Right? Right? People don't really pay 40%. And that's what they, clients pay many of the folks in this room to do is plan around this tax. The effective rate is always been lower than 40%. So when people talk about a 40% estate tax rate, yes, technically that's true. I don't think in practicality it's actually a 40% rate. I think it's much, much lower if people actually do plan. So let's talk about some approaches to do estate planning. I am afflicted with this disease, which in addition to being a lawyer, I am a CPA or a recovering CPA, perhaps. So, as my wife would tell you, I like to do everything in a logical, sequential, and repeatable fashion. So we don't go to dinner. Let's get dressed, let's get in the car, let's go to dinner, right? Everything is a step. I do the same thing in estate planning. And it stems from this. Long time ago, when I first started doing estate planning, I thought, it would really be neat if I could do estate planning for professional athletes, entertainers, Forbes 400 people. And it dawned on me that I was 28 and I had none of those clients. And I couldn't very well stand on the street corner and say, if you have $100 million, I'd like to do your estate planning, or if you're a pitcher for a major league team, I'd like to do your estate planning. So I endeavored to try to figure out what people liked about their estate planning work. So I asked some of the clients and some of the potential clients, hey, tell me what you like about your estate planning work. And universally what I found the answer was, nothing. And I said, okay, well how about tell me what you don't like? And what they said was, well, what we don't like is, we don't like that we don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't understand what they're saying. We understand our own plan. We don't know where we are in the process, beginning, middle, or end. And we don't know when it's going to be finished. Other than that, it's great. Perfect. So I thought, maybe we could come up with a way to address that. And I said, here's what we'll do. Number one, of course, the price thing is a reasonable point. Why don't we tell you what it will cost in advance? And then, the CFO of my law firm keeled over and said, you can't do that. Everything's hourly. You can't. And I said, well, we should do that or we won't, we won't prosper as we should. So fixed fees were easy. And then, of course, I said, why don't we put everything on one piece of paper that describes your estate plan? And our general counsel said, you're crazy. You can't do that. We'll get sued. I said, well, why is that? Well, because there'll be something on that one-page piece of paper that doesn't cover every contingency known to man. I'm like, okay, but we won't have any estates to plan if we don't explain it to people in a way they can understand it. They said, good point. So we did that. We did the one-page piece of paper that explained it. We gave people a fixed fee. And then for the process, I said, why don't we do this? So if you think about when you go to build a house, what do? You don't just say, build me a house. You say, I'm going to hire an architect. And the architect's going to first design what the house is going to look like. Because you want a bathroom, but you may want it over there, you may want it over there. The very first thing we do in estate planning is we design what the plan's going to look like. We do not want to draft a trust, draft a partnership, draft anything until we've shown people what it's going to look like before they're finished, before we're done. So the first phase we do is the design phase, the design proposal. Often it also includes a second opinion on their existing estate plan, if they have one. So that's very much like an architect drawing you a picture of what your house would look like. The second phase is the documentation. That's when we draft the trust, we draft the partnership, etc. And that's very much like building the house, right? The third phase is the implementation. That is very much like moving the furniture into the house. This is where we retitle assets into the trust, etc. The fourth phase is the administration. As we all know about house maintenance, that's that. So when we do estate planning, we do the same thing every time. We have a design phase, a documentation phase, an implementation phase, and an administration phase. And every client gets that, and it helps them understand where they are in the process. Now, because I'm a recovering CPA, of course, the estate planning process itself has 4 steps to it, right? Because why not? So in every estate planning we do, and you'll see this in the 4 case studies if we get to all 4 that we're going to go over today, you'll see it doesn't make a difference if the client is worth $10 million or $10 billion. We do the following 4 steps. Now let me tell you the origin of this. I was in a meeting, this is when I lived in St. Louis, I went to Phoenix for a meeting, and there was a number of meetings that day, and I was meeting potential clients who were being introduced to me. And about the 4th meeting, the client came in and said to me, hey, I want to talk about a family limited partnership because I was at a cocktail party and I heard about it and hear that it's great. And I've heard about a charitable remainder trust and I want one of those. And of course your head goes off and you think, and do you want fries with that? Right? Like it's a fast food thing. So I was a little bit, it was near the end of the day and I was a little bit frustrated. And this guy, is worth $75 million saying he wants a family limited partnership and a charitable remainder trust because he heard about it at a cocktail party. And I looked at him and I said, you don't have a will. So step 1, you should do your core estate planning documents. A revocable trust, wills, financial powers, healthcare powers, whether you're worth $10 million or $10 million. That's step 1. Step 2, then we can talk about discounting your estate. Whether it's a family limited partnership or recapitalizing your company into voting and non-voting stock or fractionalizing your interest, that's step 2. Step 3, then we can talk about moving assets out of your estate, whether it's an IDIT or it's a GRAD, or it's a beneficiary defective irrevocable trust or an irrevocable life insurance trust. That'll be step number 3. And step number 4, we can talk about your charitable planning, whether it's a private foundation, a donor advised fund, an outright charitable gift. But these are the steps. And he looks at me, because I was clearly a little agitated at the time, and he said, well, that makes sense. And since that moment, what I've explained estate planning to people, again, whether they're worth $10 million or whether they're worth $10 billion, I always walk through these 4 steps. First, let's do your core documents. That's not to do a family limited partnership before you have a will or a trust. Then we'll look for ways to discount your estate. Then we'll look for ways to move assets out and provide liquidity. Then we'll do your charitable planning. These 4 steps, and you're going to see this repeated over and over in the case studies that we're going to go over today. This is the approach that I use, and when we explain it to clients, we do it just like that. So I have and you'll see it here soon, I have a billionaire client who refers to his intentionally defective irrevocable trust as step 3. And one of my colleagues said, that's not good. He calls it step 3. I said, no, I think it's very good. He understands exactly where he is in the process, and we've explained it in a way that he can understand. So, with that, let's jump into some case studies and some stuff that we've done recently. So, first of all, I've been to these presentations, not just the ones that I presented to, but I've been to a lot as an attendee. And one of the things that I've always noticed is the case studies always end well. Everything's perfect. The clients are always happy, there's no estate tax to pay, and everyone rides off into the sunset. I don't know about you. I don't have those situations. That is not how life goes. It just isn't. Things happen, life happens. So what I thought today is we would walk through some case studies that show that estate planning, it is a journey. It is not a destination. And so I'm going to walk you through some of those case studies because this shows what do you do when planning rules are changing. What do you do when you're standing up in 2017 and somebody says, is there going to be an estate tax next year? I don't know. What should I do? Plan. But you don't know the rules. No, I don't. Well, then why should I plan? Because you're mortal. You've got to do planning. You can't stop. Life happens. Rules change. And here's, I'll save you the suspense. They're going to change again. Whatever they change to, they're going to change again. So this estate planning case study is a journey. And I'd like you to see it as that. It is a truthful journey of a client who I met in 2004. 79-year-old married couple, 2 adult children, son and a daughter, son in the business, daughter not in the business. $1 billion net worth. Most of it was in distributorships worth about $500 million. Interestingly enough, no other planning other than simple wills. Which, by the way, that surprised me, right? The net worth, the balance sheet looks something like this. There. The distributorships worth about $500 million, commercial real estate $440 million, some pass-through entities for about $150 million, and then some other assets. Isn't that neat that we can just say other assets and gloss over $100 million? Oops. Some of the goals. I don't know about you, but I haven't yet met a client who doesn't want to retain control. This one did too. Wanted to pass, this is interesting, and really important. So people say to me, clients say to me, I don't really understand what is estate planning. And I say, well, it's about where would you like your stuff to go? Who do you want to be in charge of it? And what do you want the rules to be? 3 questions. Where do you want your stuff to go? Who do you want to be in charge of it? And what do you want the rules to be? Well, this client said, I have a son in the business and a daughter who's not. I want to treat them both fairly. But it feels to me, he says, that the son should be the one who inherits the assets that are the business that he's involved in, and the daughter, other assets. Makes sense. And by the way, if you don't do that, often family discord can ensue. He obviously wanted to minimize the estate taxes. He wanted enough liquidity for estate taxes. Of course, he didn't want probate. Interestingly enough, there was one asset that we had to go through probate with. And I was fortunate enough to be working with a probate court judge who was incredibly kind and understanding and is sitting over there in this very case study. He, of course, wanted to avoid exposing the inheritance to creditors in divorce. He wanted to prepare for the possibility of incapacity or disability, which had happened before. He wanted to maintain flexibility, and he wanted to provide for charity. Some of his key issues, he had a little bit of estate tax exposure back in 2004, and not having liquidity to pay estate taxes. And he really wanted to make sure that his daughter was treated fairly. So what did we do? We did what we always do, 4 steps. I showed him this slide, tweaked a little bit, but it was essentially this. He said, what should we do? I said this. We should do your core estate planning documents, revocable trust, will, financial powers, healthcare powers. We should discount your estate. Recapitalize your company into 10% voting stock, 90% non-voting stock. Let's use a family limited partnership.
Let's set up 2 different irrevocable trusts. One for your son, one for your daughter. What should we do? Why don't we sell the assets at a discount that you want to go to your son to the trust for him? Sell the assets to your trust for your daughter that you want to go to her. Let's make sure we use life insurance not just for liquidity, but for equalization. It solved the problem. And let's do your charitable planning. Step 1 was the core documents. 2 really quick points I want to make here. I'm a really big believer in lifetime trusts. Whether you're in a state with a rule against perpetuities or not, lifetime trusts make sense. Why? Wealthy people get sued for no other reason than they're wealthy. I remember when I was in law school, 100 billion years ago, when I was in law school, it was always the case that we were in our mock stuff, always suing Deep Pockets Inc. Right? That's what you're saying. You never sue anybody who doesn't have any money. You sue people who do have money. These people have money. They need creditor protection. And of course, half the people in the country get divorced. So lifetime trusts matter. And so I say to clients often, when you look at your estate planning document, your trust, and you see a number in it that is not the page number, something's up. Why are you distributing assets outright at 30, 35, and 40? Why are you doing that? Because at those ages, you'd like the assets to be subject to creditors and divorce? That's why you like that? Lifetime trusts. And so I preach that over and over again. The second thing is this. The most difficult thing in estate planning, in my opinion, it is not figuring out ways to avoid the 40% estate tax or whatever the rate will be, or if we have it. Instead, it's trying to figure out a way to pass those values that these family members have down through the generations. So 90% of families go shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, nothing to nothing, poverty to poverty, in 3 generations. 90%. And so I gave a speech recently called 90% versus 40%. And that was, you want me to stand up here and talk about how to avoid the 40% estate tax? Discount your estate, sell stuff to IDITs, make sure you've got enough liquidity with life insurance, use donor-advised funds and charitable techniques. That's what you should do. I think that took 20 seconds to say. Right? But how do you pass the values down? How do you do that? Well, make sure that your trust speaks to it. Say what they are. So when you read it, you know who this person is. You know what those values are. And if you fail to do that, that is where you run into the 90% of families go shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So you can call it incentive provisions or whatever it is that you want to pass on your values. So step 1 is core documents. Step 2, discount the estate. Look for ways to argue stuff that's worthless. I say to our folks in our office, when they say, how do you do that? I say, well, let's get the personal financial statement of the client, break out your index finger, put your index finger on every single asset on that financial statement, and ask the question, how do I argue this is worth less? Because for every dollar you can argue it's worth less, it will save you 40 cents of estate taxes. How do you argue stuff's worth less? Well, I think we know, and we've known for a while. You can use family limited partnerships to do it. So, if I have $1 million of IBM stock, and I die with it, I look it up and, well, I guess you don't look anything in the newspaper anymore, do you? Look it up on your phone. Oh, my kids wouldn't like that newspaper comment. So, you look it up on your phone, you see what it's worth, no mystery, it's worth $1 million, you pay $400,000 of estate taxes. Instead, if you put the $1 million of IBM stock in a limited partnership, and you own limited partnership interest, magically we can argue that those limited partnership interests are worth less than $1 million. How much less than $1 million? Doesn't matter. We're fighting between a win and a win, right? Because limited partnership interests don't trade on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Because you can't just sell limited partnership interests without the general partner's consent. Those are real. And of course, President Obama for years and years and years made attempts to eliminate or reduce the impact of those discounts. And as everyone knows, those potential regs have essentially been withdrawn. the family limited partnership. Yes, a round of applause for that. Those techniques remain very viable. Similarly with S corporations, what do? We often recapitalize it into voting stock and non-voting stock. 10% voting and 90% non-voting. And then somebody will jump up and down and say, no, you can't have a second class of stock with an S corp that'll blow the S election. And we say, no. Voting and non-voting isn't considered a second class of stock. And then they look at you like the dog that hears the fucking noise and they tilt their head like, really? Yeah, really, it's not. And then with the non-voting stock, we get a discount in, or you fractionalize things, right? The classic techniques. So that's what we did here. We recapitalized the business into voting and non-voting stock, and we used a family limited partnership. We used an irrevocable trust to be the general partner of the family limited partnership, because if the IRS is going to argue for this whole inclusion, if you retain a string of control is 2036, and you know that's the argument they're going to make, why have a fight? And you can have your grantor of the irrevocable trust have the ability to fire the trustee and replace him with somebody else who isn't related or subordinate, so they have control. What are the benefits of valuation discount? Well, this particular case study has a billionaire in it, right? So not all my clients, not most of my clients, small minority of my clients are billionaires, but the concept's the same, whether you're worth $1 billion or whether you're worth, $30 million. In this particular situation, the benefits of the valuation discount were north of $100 million. So, what's he going to retain? A lot. What he's going to do is, he's going to do his core documents, he's going to discount his stuff, and he's going to sell stuff at a discount to 2 trusts. One trust for his son, one trust for his daughter. What does he sell the trust for the son? Stuff he wants to leave to his son. What does he sell the trust for a daughter? Stuff he wants to leave to his daughter. Selling it at a discount. That saves estate taxes. Well, wait a minute. If you're going to sell assets to irrevocable trusts, it's like that, please. Switch. Hey. Won't that trigger a tax? Of course it won't, because again, there is just this bizarre, crazy notion that's out there that, if there's something you take away from today, it's this. So we can set up an irrevocable trust. And as I say to clients, what does that mean? They say, what does an irrevocable trust mean? You don't pay estate taxes on what's in it. That's what that means. You're like, wait a minute. A revocable trust I pay estate taxes on, but an irrevocable trust I don't. That's right. And then of course they look at you and they say, why don't we put everything in the irrevocable trust? Well, it's not that simple. You see, there's this gift, you can only give so much into it, $5 million and change. Oh, well, how else do you get stuff in it? Well, you can sell stuff to it. Woo, that'll trigger capital gains tax, won't it? No. And the clients look at you and they say, no, I'm pretty confident when I sell something, it triggers capital gains tax. Yeah, not in this situation. Why is that? Well, because for income tax purposes, that trust is you. No, Chris, you just told me that trust isn't me. That's for estate taxes, it's not you. But for income taxes, it is you. And they say, this is why no one trusts lawyers. Right? You talk out of both sides of your mouth, because is it me or is it not me? Well, for estate taxes, put your hand on the Bible, it's not me. For income taxes, put your hand on the Bible, it is you. So when you sell something to this trust, you take back a promissory note, it's a disregarded transaction. There is no capital gains tax. Really? Yes. And by the way, again, President Obama, in the 8 years of his administration, jumped up and down and said, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. You need to be able to pick. I mean, it's got to be one or the other, but you can't have it both ways. Again, he was unable to pass legislation, which is what it would take, to change that rule. So, if there's one thing that they think about here in terms of estate planning, that technique, an irrevocable trust that is not you for estate taxes, but it is you for income taxes, is enormously powerful. Enormously powerful. Why? Well, just think about the tax burden. Just the tax burden. You get to pay the income taxes for stuff you don't own. What? Yeah, you do. So when I sell these distributorship businesses that are passed through to this irrevocable trust, and it generates a bunch of income tax, I get to pay the income tax, not the trust? That's right. Where will I get the money? The trust will send you the money. Is it paid out of your promissory note? So your estate tax liability is essentially starting at this number and going down, 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 down. every time an income tax payment is made. That's crazy good. Crazy good. So, you know, I'm an estate planning lawyer, so I get excited about this kind of stuff. My wife and kids think I'm a bit of a dork with this, but that's incredible. I mean, right? Income taxes make a tax-free gift? You couldn't make it up. How about you put it in a trust that forever is free of estate taxes? Sure. How about I sell something to a discount, at a discount to that trust? Even better. So what should we do? That. Think about it no more complicated than this. What tax rules did they want to change? Well, they wanted to eliminate discounts. So what should we do? We should use discounts. They wanted to eliminate the possibility of trusts going on forever. But they didn't. So we should use trusts that go on forever. They wanted to eliminate the possibility that you could put your hand on the Bible and say, it's not me for estate taxes, but it is me for income taxes. So we should do that. And we should do that all the time. Oh, but Chris, what if there is no estate tax? We should still do that. Why? You don't think the rules will change again? You don't think there's ever a possibility that somebody will come into office in the House, the Senate, or the presidency that might have a little bit of a different view? And you don't think that could happen? Well, so you don't think we have a $20 trillion debt? You don't think we have massive concentration of wealth? And you don't think that these trusts provide creditor and divorce protection? In this particular situation, we sold it to irrevocable trust for a son and a daughter. In my family situation, my wife was kind enough to set up one of these trusts for me. It's almost like she knew an estate planning lawyer. And I set one up for her. We like the idea of that protection against estate taxes through the generation. We like the creditor protection, etc. So, of course, the pay down of these notes is what I was just describing. The distribution from the company to the trust back. There. Now, we also bought life insurance here. Why did we buy life insurance? One, we bought it because we needed liquidity for estate taxes. But number two, we needed it as an equalizer. He said his goal was son and daughter treated equally. Well, the distributorship businesses are worth a whole bunch. The other stuff is worth a whole bunch too, but not as much. The life insurance was an equalizer. Now, why did I not put the life insurance in the same I get for the daughter? Why not? Here's why. I'm a huge, big fan of generation skipping. And what that means, as everyone knows, is it's a horrible misnomer. It sounds like you skip over your children for your grandchildren. You don't. You skip over the estate taxes when your kids die, and when your grandchildren die, when your great-grandchildren die. Well, here's the thing. When I sold stuff at a discount to a trust for the benefit of the son, the benefit of the daughter, I don't know for sure whether that discount is going to 100% stick. It's possible, even if I use a formula clause, that the IRS might take slight exception to that discount that I took. And so we might fight between a 35% discount and a 25% discount, or a 40% discount and a 30% discount. If I end up with that fight, and I end up settling with them, I don't want my IDIT, right, which is going to now be partially generation skipping exempt and partially not, I don't want my life insurance corrupted that way, where that death benefit is partially GST and partially non-GST. So I put the life insurance in a separate trust that doesn't have any issues. It'll be perfectly 100% GST. Well, where does it get the money? It happens to know some other trusts that have a bunch of money. They can loan money to it. So I put the life insurance inside of a separate trust. Something to think about as you do the life insurance plan. So there's that slide that explains that. And of course the charitable planning they did as well. Well, as I said, life happens. And Mr. Patriarch died. In the famous words of Astro Jetson, because there's still $220 million of promissory notes out there. What happens when you do an IDIT sale and there's still a balance of a promissory note out there? What are the tax consequences? Here's the answer. No one on the face of the earth knows. We don't know. Now, Jonathan Blockmacher was here. He would tell you, all's good in the hood, everything's great, the IRS is going to send you a bunch of money, right? And he might be right. Others will tell you, oh, no, that triggers capital gains tax at death because now it's not a grantor trust, and Well, unfortunately, we had to make a decision right then. And by the way, the tax landscape was potentially changing in 2012, if people might remember. Capital gains taxes might be going up, estate tax rates might be going up, and exemptions might be going down, we think. Now, the family also told me there's likely going to be a liquidity event in the next 5 years. So, what position did we take on the estate tax return? We said there's no gain recognized because the estate owned a receivable and the basis in the receivable is the face value of the receivable, the note. We also said that the IDIT's basis in the assets was carryover basis. So, a bit of a middle ground position. The client explained it to me. My client said, you're doing the little pigs get fat, no capital gains tax on the sale. But big pigs get slaughtered, so you're not saying there's a step up in basis inside the IDIT. I said, yeah, that's what we're doing. But you know, we had a problem. See, the whole plan here was these distributorship assets, this real estate, these pass-through things, they generate a bunch of income a year and a bunch of income tax. And that's how I paid out the promissory note. Right? Well, when the client is so rude and uncooperative and chooses to die, that creates a problem. I had a beautiful plan going on. A beautiful plan going on. And he uncooperatively died. So what do? Well, we sit in my office and we say, now what do we do? Well, one, we could do nothing. Start filing 1041s, income tax returns for the trust. Trust pay their own taxes. Or option two, I said, wait a minute. His wife's still alive. Yeah, she's alive. But Chris, it's not a grantor trust to her, it's a grantor trust to him, and he died. Yeah. Like, why don't we sell the stuff to a trust that she's the grantor of? Well, Chris, because this is not a grantor trust anymore. That will trigger capital gains tax. You know, but capital gains tax rates may be going up. And they say they're going to sell this business within 5 years. I bet if we do the math, and we capture the capital gains tax rates when they're lower, as long as they actually sell the business within a reasonable period of time, we might be better off. We did the math. Crossover report was about 7 years. So we said to the client, hey, you can sell this stuff from the old trust, it's a non-grantor trust, to a new trust, it's a grantor trust to your mom. It'll trigger capital gains tax, but it's at the lower rate. As long as you sell the business within 7 years. That makes some sense. They say, okay. And I said, and if you're going to have a liquidity event, if you're really going to have a liquidity event, and based on these numbers, I think it might be really, really big. That'd be good. Why? Because now it's a grantor trust to the mom, and we can wipe out her estate with a massive capital gains tax code. You're gonna bankrupt my mom. That's right. Well, you're gonna need to explain that to her. Because she's like everyone else who's 80 years old and older. No matter how much money she has, she thinks she is broke. And you're gonna actually make her broke. Look at all the estate tax we'll avoid. And he says, I am not going to be there when you talk to my mom. So I did talk to his mom. I explained it. We actually set up a different irrevocable trust for her benefit as well, so that she had some money. Believe it or not, she said, I want to see an account that has $50 million in it that is for me. Okay, well, we can set up an irrevocable trust and put $50 million in it and loan it to it, take back a note. Would that make you happy? Will it say it's for me and have $50 million in it? Yes. Okay. So we did. Now, again, life happens. One of the grandchildren 30-year-old granddaughter, history of mental health issues, severely bipolar, and drug abuse. Starts harassing the trustees and family members. No accident this happens the year after the grandfather dies. Really creates family turmoil. Again, I told you every one of these presentations I go to, everything always ends well, the family all gets along, and they all sing off into the sunset, kumbaya, right? Not in my world, that didn't happen. And it didn't happen here. We had a beneficiary who absolutely went full on against the family. So what do? The trust protector, some people call it a special trustee, but it's a flexibility device to change your trust. Change the distribution standards, which was directly within their purview, to absolute discretion for the trustees, which I've become a much bigger fan of since this case. We had a number of family meetings and interventions. The beneficiary actually filed a lawsuit, and really interesting. Well, the family didn't think it was interesting, but I thought it was interesting. So, can't find a lawyer to take the case. Finally, finds a lawyer. And what had happened is, in another part of this case that I didn't talk about, the grandfather had essentially given each grandchild $250,000. And he specifically said to me, I want to do that as a test. I said, test of what? He said, see what they do with it. Well, it turns out this grandchild uses it to hire a lawyer. Test results in. So the lawyer comes up with this big, long lawsuit. Whole big thing. Files it. But won't serve it. Because we had said, hey, you serve this lawsuit, right? It could be sanctionable. There's no basis for this. Trust has been administered properly, etc. So he takes the lawyer charges $250,000, exactly the amount that the grandchild had. Files the lawsuit but won't serve it. Beneficiary finds another lawyer who will serve it. Serves it, and then we meet with that lawyer and the lawyer withdraws. So now we got pro se. So now we have, unfortunately and tragically, an unmedicated grandchild who is struggling mightily, who's filed a lawsuit, has no lawyer representing them. And unfortunately, we had to implement or advocate for the no contest clause. Tragically, this child is currently in a mental hospital, trying to get stabilized. It's taken years to get her to a point where we could get medicine introduced. And unfortunately, she will not be a beneficiary anymore. The mother will likely have to set up a trust for a benefit. It's not all ends well there. This is a tragically sick individual who's really struggling and hopefully will come around. Now, on more positive news, in 2016, there was a liquidity event. It happened. And Mrs. Patriarch's taxable estate was completely eliminated. We had inserted a tax reimbursement clause in that IDA, where she was the grantor, so she had enough money to pay the taxes, because she would have been negative otherwise. Now, I just want you to think about this for a minute. We had a billionaire family that literally will not file an estate tax return when she does. She doesn't have an estate. All the wealth will be in irrevocable trust, forever free of estate taxes through the generations. Creditor protected and divorce protected. Why? Discounts matter. The tax burn matters. That's just an incredible result. But is it? We didn't go offshore. We didn't do anything crazy. I had a call yesterday from an investment advisor in Phoenix who was reaching out to me saying, hey, we'd like to work with you. It seems like you do planning for very high net worth people. And we'd like to know kind of what's your secret sauce. What's the thing you do? Do you have something? Is it proprietary? I bet it's offshore, right? No. It's 4 steps. You see, you start with core documents. You just got your estate. You move assets out of the estate. IDs are a wonderful way to do that. Life insurance matters. Use it for equalization, use it for liquidity, and do your charitable plan. Absolute discretion here and no contest clauses were important. I want to say one more thing about this. So, I am incredibly fortunate to meet families like this one who've led the American dream. This family started with nothing and ended up being a billionaire family. And although I do estate planning for them and they think that I can help them with that, and hopefully I do, I always find that I learn more from these families than they learn from me. So with each one of these case studies, I want to just give you a minute on what I learned from them. And I could give you an hour on what I learned from this family, but I'll just give you one. What I learned with this family is that people treasure values more than stuff. And here's what I mean. Before the father died, he told his son that he was going to leave a note for him in his office. Yes, and he did. After his death, son went to the desk and opened up the letter, and the letter said, "Son, if you're reading this, I've died. Don't feel badly for me. I've lived the American dream. But there's some things I'd like you never to forget." And it listed a number of values. Things like hire for character, train for skill, or people, because that's what mattered to him. Or it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. Things like that. The son was so touched and moved by that he had them printed up and handed out at the celebration of life at this man's funeral. And it is his most valued possession. If you go into his office, the thing he'll show you, it's the letter. It's the values. That's what mattered to him. Far more than the wealth. He's a billionaire. That's a lot of wealth. Right? But it paled in comparison to the gift that his father gave him of the values. And I learned that.
It was a great first half, Chris. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the second half. The history of the foundation has always been built on the great team making up our outstanding investment committee, comprised of local professional volunteers serving as investment consultants. However, last year, the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation started a process to see what else was possible. We wanted an investment consultant to help us manage our individual and agency's funds. Our investment philosophy remains the same. A conservatively based approach, building upon the endowment model pioneered by Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. We are very pleased to announce that after an extensive RFP process, that Greystone Consulting is the investment consultant for the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. Greystone is the largest consultant for not-for-profit and faith-based endowments and foundations. Immediately, they have been able to lower our fund costs even further and bring an unparalleled level of expertise and institutional investment access to the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation. Now, it is my honor to introduce my good friend and our president and CEO, Meyer Bodoff.
In addition to getting to see some very dear old friends, I've had the opportunity to meet some new friends. As Andy just said, we heard the first half of a great presentation from Chris. Rusty gave you the exciting news about our new birth, the newest addition to our family, the Southwest Community Foundation. And Andy just told you about our new investment advisors, Greystone Consulting, and what they add to our existing suite of services. Without question, we are not your average community foundation. We constantly strive to make our fund holder experience the best it can be. And at the same time, we wish to provide real value-added service to you, our professional advisors. And normally, these are the things that I would talk about this morning, but not today. Because for the past couple weeks, thinking about this seminar, I couldn't get two news stories out of my head. They're stories that I believe highlight the unique character, heart, and soul of our foundation. The first story was that outrageously hate-filled march that took place in Charlottesville. Members of the Nazi Party, Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists marched to demonstrate that racism, anti-Semitism, and hatred unfortunately still do exist in our nation. And by the way, as a side note, regardless of what anybody told you, there were no people of goodwill marching under a Nazi flag. But what does that have to do with us this morning? Other organizations were probably as shocked as we were. Unfortunately, they said very little, and they did even less. Within 48 hours of the Charlottesville Hate Fest, the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation awarded $25,000 to 5 organizations who stand against and fight against everything those marchers stand for. They were the Holocaust Center for Education and Tolerance, the NAACP, Catholic Charities Immigration and Resettlement Department, Cathedral of Hope, and the Anti-Defamation League. Sometimes words are not enough, and action is required. We wanted to send a message that we, this foundation, will not be silent, and groups that were targeted did not stand alone. But it was hardly a few days after that march when another evil was visited upon us. This time, that evil's name was Harvey. When Houston and the surrounding areas were devastated, we responded with our fund holders, and within a matter of hours, hundreds of thousands of dollars were immediately earmarked and sent to organizations helping those who were affected. Why? Because our neighbors were in trouble. No one cared about race or religion, color, orientation, or status. Just that our neighbors were in trouble. We define our neighbors as those living around the corner, living around the state, and living anywhere across this great nation. And when there is a crisis, we will always respond. Whether it is against the evil inclinations of hate-filled people or the brutality of nature, we will act, and we will never sit on the sidelines. The Dallas Jewish Community Foundation and now the Southwest Community Foundation. 2 names you can trust, 2 names you can count on. 2 names that will care for your clients and at the same time will stand up for what is right. 2 names who will speak for those who have no voice. And I promise you, 2 names that you and your clients will recognize as trusted partners. Make no mistake, we consider your trust the highest compliment we can ever receive. We'll never take it lightly, and we'll never let you down. On the business card of every one of the foundation's staff, there's a quotation on the back of the card. It's there to remind us every day of our mission and to remind you of what we stand for. And that quote is from Albert Einstein. And it says, "It is the responsibility of every human being to aspire to do something worthwhile, to make this world a better place than the one they found." Just remember that one phrase. To make this world a better place than the one they found. Remember that, and you will know everything there is to know about the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation and the new Southwest Community Foundation to make this world a better place than the one they found. Thank you. It's my pleasure to ask Chris to come back to the podium.
Thank you so much. We're going to actually talk about what you talked about at the very end of the presentation, and that is this. I do think that while everyone in the room here does estate planning, wills and trusts, oh, it's so much bigger than that. So much bigger than that. We truly have an opportunity to meet with folks and to make a difference, to touch lives, to help families, and to help them help other families. So I hope, as we think through generation skipping or not, discount or not, I did regret, I hope we keep our eye on the ball. And the eye on the ball is making a difference, touching lives, helping families, having an impact, whether it's individually or through an incredible organization like yours. Let's talk about case study number 2. Plastic surgeon. We started these discussions in 2014, and again, this is one of these situations where I'd love to tell you everything ends up beautifully with a pretty bow on it. That's just not life. That's not how families work. That's not what happens. He's 55. His wife's 50. They have 4 children, net worth of $25 million. And once again, inexplicably, they have only wills, testamentary with testamentary trust and outright distributions, because, you know, who wouldn't want their assets subject to creditors at 25, 30, and 35? I don't know why that happens, but it does. So, he says to me, hey, by the way, this comes out in the estate planning questionnaire. He asks this question, you have any inheritance you expect or anything like that? He says, yeah. My dad set up an old graft for me. I'm like, okay. He says, by the way, I can send it anywhere I want, so we should figure that out in the estate plan. I said, you can send it anywhere you want. I said, well, what's in it? And he says, oh, I get a little bit of family S-corp stock in a family business. And I said, okay, how much? And he said, about $200 million. I say, okay, so you told me your net worth was $25 million. It turns out you've got this trust that's a grat, it's included in your estate that you have $200 million over, so you know we're going to pay estate taxes not on 25. And he says, no, that's all I own. And I said, funny, it doesn't quite work that way. Right? You're going to pay estate taxes on the $200 million. He's like, no, that's out of the estate. I'm like, no, that's out of your father's estate, not out of your estate. And he says, okay, well, can you read the trust for me? I said, fully literate, I can do that. He says, well, tell me, where does it go? And I read it, and it goes outright to his children at ages 25, 30, and 35. He says, so wait a minute. I die, this goes outright to my children. That's right, 25, 30, and 35. He said, I've got some that are about that age or getting close. I said, stay alive. You see his estate tax exposure before we did anything. So, where do we start? What do we do? Well, of course, core documents, revocable trust wills, financial powers living wills, lifetime trusts for creditor, divorce, and estate tax protection, as always. At the time we did this, the estate tax exemption was $10.68 million, so we set up IDITs again for the benefit of his children, and we made the maximum gift to those trusts. And then he said, hey, what do I do about this old graft that has $200 million in it? And so I said to myself, and I said to my team, so what do we do about that old graft that has $200 million in it? What do we do about that? So it's an S-corp stock, family business, he's a minority shareholder. Yeah, so it feels like there's a couple options here. So just thinking about it, I'm trying to figure out, what are we trying to accomplish? And so I say to him, hey, do you need access
to all $200 million. And he says, huh. I said, do you need access to most of it? He said, I really don't need access to any of it. I said, really? He said, no. I got 25 million, I'm a plastic surgeon, I'm just fine, and our lifestyle isn't going to change. It's pretty philanthropic as well. I said, okay, so we kind of have to figure out what we're trying to accomplish. If you really don't have a desire for access to it, it feels to me like we could do one of a couple things. Maybe one, your father could create a GSD item, just like we saw in case study number 1, for your benefit. And the grad could simply sell the stock to that GSD item in exchange for a note. So what have we done? We've frozen the value of the grad at $200 million plus interest at a low AFR rate, right? And we got the growth into a GSD item. And the cool thing is, your dad will keep. Maybe he won't keep. Possibly. Keep. I promise you he will keep. All right, back there, change the slide. Next one. There we go. He will, the dad will keep paying the tax. And so if you think about this, what this is prioritizing the father's estate tax issue. This is me saying, hey, what matters here is we want your father's estate tax exposure to go down. And so every year he keeps paying the income taxes for this big S-corp, it's a win, because you're going to inherit the estate. So if you look at the advantages and disadvantages of it, his father's estate continues to be reduced. It shifts the tax distributions to the GSD IDIT. The doctor maintains access. Now, the challenge is the old grat still is included in his estate. The estate taxes cannot be deferred till the second death. You know, fundamental tax planning, best time to pay tax? Never. Second best time? As late as possible, right? Well, this doesn't allow us to defer the estate taxes until the second death. And of course, the assets passing under that old grat are going to be included in the children's estate, and it lacks creditor and divorce protection. So anyway, option 1 is, all right, just sell the stuff from the grat to a GSD IDIT in exchange for a note. Option 2, why don't you distribute the assets of the old grat outright to him? And the trust actually permitted this. There's a provision in there that allows that to happen. Lifetime power of appointment in effect. And now that's in his estate, what could he do? Well, he could sell it to, he could sell it, possibly he could sell it. Here he could sell it, there we go. He could sell it to a GSD IDIT for the benefit of the kids in exchange for a $200 million promissory note. So what do you want to do? You want to just sell it from the grat to an IDIT, take back a note, and now the father's estate continues to go down? Or do you want to actually distribute it out to yourself and you sell it to an IDIT for the kids? What's estate planning about? Where do you want your stuff to go? Who do you want to be in charge? What do you want the rules to be? Well, do you want this in a trust for your benefit? Do you want this in a trust for your children's benefit? Those are the options. The advantages of option 2, you can see. Of course, the appreciation goes inside the GSD IDIT. Dr. P's estate, the $200 million, keeps going down, and we get to defer the estate tax till the second death. Disadvantage, of course, he loses access to the old grat. His father's estate is no longer reduced by the income tax payments. The promissory note is still included in his estate. Now, he says, well, what should I do? Option 1 or option 2. I call this in the meeting the head turn, where they turn their head to you and they say, what would you do? Right? And he says, oh, there's one more thing I should tell you. I said, what's that? He said, my dad's wife is his second wife. It's not my mom. And she's only 5 years older than me. She's in great health. I said, really? So, let me understand this. When your father dies, where's his stuff go? Well, it goes to his wife. I said, okay, so when we're looking at the situation of who's going to pay estate tax first, your father or you, it kind of felt like it would be your dad. But now I'm not so sure it will be. Because if everything goes to her, and she's only 5 years older and she's in great health, it could be right around the same time. So maybe as we look at that, we say, in option 1, we're in effect reducing the father's estate. In option 2, we're reducing your estate. We thought we'd want to go maybe with option 1, your father's going to die first. We'd want to avoid estate taxes then. That seems like it would make a lot of sense. He says, oh, whoa. There's one more thing I got to tell you. I said, we should try to get all this out on the table at once. Because it'd make it a whole lot easier. And he says, well, here's the thing. I think the company's likely going to sell within 5 years. Okay. If the company's going to sell within 5 years, then reducing the father's estate by keeping him a grantor is going to make a whole lot of sense, right? Because he's in effect paying the capital gains tax with 60-cent dollars, right? He's going to be subject to the estate tax. So I think that option 1 is going to win the day. He says, great, let's go talk to my dad. Let's explain it to him. He says, oh, you should know, my dad is kind of old school. I said, old school? What does that mean? He says, well, he kind of likes to make the decisions. I said, okay. Kind of autocratic. I said, okay. He says, have you ever heard of something called narcissistic personality disorder? I said, not till now. He says, well, you're about to meet it. He's got that. I said, okay. So we go and we have a meeting with his dad. And we explain the different options, and we explain the estate tax, etc. And he brings his in-house lawyer with him, who turns out is just a CPA. Not a lawyer, but no one can tell the father that, right? Because that would upset him. So I said to him, sir, well, what would you like to do? Option 1 or 2, your choice, right? You're in charge. And his response, of course, is, neither. This is rather unfortunate. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of money coming up with the 2 options and planning them. And then this autocratic gentleman says, no planning for you. Then, again, in an unbelievably rude, inconvenient moment, he died. No planning had happened. The $200 million grant is still out there. We're not getting the tax burden from him anymore, and he's got the nerve to up and die. So at this point, the plastic surgeon comes back to me and he says, well, now what do we do? And I said, well, there is no option 1 anymore. He died. We're going to go with option 2. Distribute the stuff out, sell it for the benefit of your kids. But you are going to have a $200 million promissory note in your estate. And he said, well, what do I do about that? And I said, well, probably a couple things. 1, life insurance. So he bought about $80 million the second to die life insurance, because now at least we can defer the estate tax to the second death. And he established a donor-advised fund. And one of his missions was to make sure that his children understood the impact that wealth could have on others. He said he didn't need the $200 million himself, and he wanted to make sure that that donor-advised fund was established. And so his revocable trust literally leaves everything to that. So what did I learn here? Well, the best laid plans, right? Thought I had some good options. Father says, nope, neither one. Next, I learned all families have struggles. This family on its surface, in the particular state they live in, there's articles written about them all the time. It's a shiny, happy family. Everyone's great. Not so much. Next, tax planning must be flexible. Sometimes for no reason, people will simply say, no, we won't do any planning. And then people die sometimes in an untimely way. Finally, I learned if I can't use the tax burn of an item one way, let's just use it another way. And that's what we did. Now, the turning it around part here, what I learned from them. One, that old expression, failing to plan is planning to fail. He was such a autocratic guy that while he built this incredibly successful business worth billions of dollars, he failed. Because he failed to plan. Next, I thought this was really interesting. So, when the son said to me, my client, I want you to meet my father, and have you heard of narcissistic personality disorder? He wasn't kidding. And he was very authentic, and he was very transparent about that. He was not ashamed of it. He was real. And far too often, people aren't. So, far too often, when we see each other, we say, how are you? And everyone says the same thing. Good. How are you? As a matter of fact, the people who work with me in my office got me a coffee mug that says on it, good, good, good. Because they hear me on the phone 30 times a day, and people always start the conversation with, how are you? And I always say, good, good, good. Some days I am. Some days I'm not. This man taught me authenticity, being real, being vulnerable, saying the truth. Hey, look, my family has some issues with it. My father is super autocratic. He has narcissistic personality disorder. He does. We've all struggled because of that. Many of us have been in therapy because of that. His wife is having physical symptoms because of that. That authenticity, that realness struck me, and it taught me that if you're going to have real connection in life, and if you're going to make progress, if you're going to grow, you need to sometimes be vulnerable, you need to be real, you need to be authentic. He taught me that. Okay, case study number 3. Mr. and Mrs. Executive. 74-year-old husband, 73-year-old wife, 4 adult children. They've been married for 45 years. He was executive of a large multinational company, and none of his children are capable of managing the world. All very nice people, but none of them were capable of that. We had already done, you can imagine what? Steps. We already did core documents. We already discounted his estate by using a family limited partnership. We already did the IDIT sales. We already had some life insurance, and he had a donor advised fund already set up. We had been working with him for a while. So his existing estate plan looked a little bit like this. You see what's in the revocable trust, you see what's in the IDITs, you see what's in the ILIT. So if you look at his current plan, I'm a big believer in saying to a family in a really simple way, there are 3 places your stuff can go. Family, charity, or the IRS. Somebody should put on a piece of paper what that is today. We did. And you see what the family was getting, what the IRS was getting, and what the charity was getting. So when I put this on a piece of paper and was going over it with my team before we had the meeting, I said to them, hey, you know when we explain estate plans to clients and we explain estate planning techniques and we talk about the 4 weapons against estate tax, the $14,000, soon to be $15,000 annual gift tax exclusion is weapon 1. Weapon 2, the unlimited marital deduction to defer the estate taxes till the second death. Weapon 3, the $5 million index for inflation, gift and estate tax exemption. And weapon number 4, the $5 million index for inflation, generations gift exemption. Remember how we tell them that? Yeah, I remember how you say that. You say that every time. We've heard it a billion times, and we should stop saying it. Yes. Remember how I tell them, hey, our job is to figure out how to get $100 million estate or a $500 million estate or a $1 billion estate through a $10 or $11 million hole. Remember how we tell them that? Yeah, I remember how you tell them that. You say that all the time and you always hold your hand up like this. Yep. Well, look what we did. Just right there, with discounting and sales to IDITs and the tax burden. We've already passed $112 million through a $10 million hole. Stop. Look at that. And let's make sure we tell the client that. That's what we've done so far. That's the power of these techniques. So the client says to me, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man with an incredible life story. He says to me, as he often did, in 2015, he said, Chris, I'm nearing the end of my life. What's next? I said, well, I can't tell you like what happens later, right? I don't know. But in terms of estate planning, I can tell you where we are, some of the problems, some of your goals, and give you some options. So the problems are we have a $100 million estate tax exposure. We're going to lose the ability to pay the income taxes when you die. I've seen this before. Your health is failing, of course, and you don't know what you want to do next. You tell me that your goal is you want to reduce some estate tax exposure, and you tell me that you want to change 10,000 lives. Interesting. And you want to engage the family in this decision-making process. For the first time, when you previously met with me about what the estate plan should be, now you want to bring them in it. In part because I've been jumping up and down saying to you, you're mortal. We got to get your kids involved with this. We gotta. He says, great. He says, but Chris, I understand you want to do family meetings, but you've got to present clear options. You've got to explain this really, really, really simply. When you lay out the options, these children, they're not familiar with taxes, financial things. So when you lay out the options, please do it in a way that they can understand it. It's not that they're not bright. This isn't their ballpark. I said, got it. I said, why don't we do it this way? We'll present options, 4 of them. And I'm going to show you specifically on one piece of paper what the options do. And I want to present this to you all, because if you were the client, I believe this is what you would want. He asked me a simple question, what's next? Well, there's options. Option 1, make a $50 million gift to charity. What does that mean to the family? I told you there's 3 different places stuff can go. Family, charity, or the IRS. So why don't we put a piece of paper in front of them that says, here's the impact on what family gets, charity gets, or the IRS gets. Family goes down by 30, IRS goes down by 20, charity goes up by 50. The children got it. They understood it. And as estate planners, as investment professionals, as trust officers, as life insurance professionals, as charitable professionals, this is our job. We must explain to people in ways they can understand what it means to them. Isn't that what you'd want to know? I learned something in this because he forced me to put it on one piece of paper in a way that showed just that. Another option we showed. Contribute $50 million to a family, the family limited partnership, sell the limited partnership interest to irrevocable trusts. Now, we can talk about family limited partnerships in 2036. We can talk about who's the general partner. We can talk about distributions or not distribution from the limited partnership. We can talk about the magic of an IDIT and the income tax versus estate tax. None of that matters to them. What does matter? What happens to the amount of money I get, charity gets, and the IRS gets? And so we showed them in simple words and in simple numbers. Option 3. Contribute $50 million to the partnership, sell limited partnership interest to irrevocable trust, and distribute the notes to charity. You see the table there of what people get. He says, great, this is what I want you to present to the family meeting. So I present to the family meeting all of these options. Option 1, option 2, option 3. I'm pretty excited, pretty jazzed up, as you might be able to tell, that we've come up with a way to explain in a really simple way how this impacts everybody. And so as they go through the 3 options, what they chose was none of them. I said, why not? They said, we don't want any debt. What do you mean? What do you mean you want debt? Well, when you sell stuff to these partnerships, you take back a note. Well, we owe the money. Well, yeah, kind of. You're going to inherit that, yeah. No, we don't owe any money, but you're owing it to yourself. We don't do debt. My father told us not to do debt. Okay, but it's debt to your... No, my father told us not to do debt. And I look over at the father. He doesn't say a word. So, we do what we always do in situations like that. We tuck tail, right? Run away, and call for a second family meeting with option 4. And what we presented was, gives $50 million to his wife. She puts it in the limited partnership, gets back a 27.5% interest. She sells it to him, the existing ILIT actually. The ILIT purchases some additional life insurance on her life. The cash inside the ILIT and the tax distributions will cover the premiums. And then we amend the revocable trust to say, the promissory notes from the IDIT sales will pass to the children in lifetime trust, and the balance of the estate will pass to charity. This is what they decided they wanted, and you'll see the distribution. You'll see what actually happens here. The difference in additional amounts because of the additional insurance. They wanted insurance there. Okay. Now, sadly, he dies. Immediately after his death, we had a family meeting. And the children said, our father taught us much, but one of the things that he taught us was we want to invest in people, not buildings. So he taught us to make a difference in other people's lives. He said his goal was to change 10,000 lives, and we haven't done that yet. So what we want to do is we want to accelerate the $50 million of charitable giving right now. And so what I take from this is, did the discounts in this matter? Yep. Did the tax burden matter? Shoot, at one point we had gotten $112 million out of the estate with a $10 million hole. Did I learn to simplify the options? I did. And to leverage the GST. But one of the other things I learned here is these families are deeply impacted by the values that are passed on. Don't have any debt. I want to change 10,000 lives. Our job, it may look like it's the discount with the family limited partnership. It may look like it's the GST ILIT or IDIT. It may look like it's the tax burden from the IDIT sale. It's not. It's trying to figure out a way to take their goals, their purpose, their mission, and fulfill it. Change 10,000 lives. So when you turn this one around and talk about what I learned here, I'll never forget one of the first conversations I had with him. He was interviewing me, and he interviewed me several times. He said, we're going to date before we make. Okay? So he asked me up front, one of those meetings, hey, I get what you're talking about, revocable trust, discounting the family limited partnership, IDIT sales. How much is it going to cost? And I told him a number. We were sitting in an airplane hangar at a table, and he wrote the number. And then he wrote a number below it. And he said, so I've talked to some other folks. I said, oh, I bet you have. He said, some other people say they can do it for less. They can do it for this. And he wrote the number. And then between the two numbers, the number here and the number here, he wrote the letter V. And he said, I'm not asking you to do it for less than what you're suggesting. All I want to know is, what's your value for the difference? What's your V? What do you bring to the table that justifies or explains that cost? I'm not looking for the low-cost provider. I just want to know what your value is. And he taught me something there. That it actually is about the value that you bring. It isn't about the price. And if you're able to explain to people, hey, maybe my value is, yes, I have some technical expertise, other people do too. Maybe I have value in explaining complicated things in a simple way. Maybe I have value in doing the things I say I'll do. I'll call you back when I say I will. That shouldn't be a distinguisher, but apparently it is. And then the final value is I care. I care about you. I care about your family. And that will be my value. He taught me about that. The next thing he taught me was something he called the marshmallow test. And that was this. It actually comes from a book that he read. He said, you know, Chris, they did a study a long time ago. Took a bunch of 5-year-olds. They put them in a room one at a time. They put a marshmallow in front of the 5-year-old. And they said to the 5-year-old, here's a marshmallow. A couple options. 1, you can eat it. 2, wait 20 minutes, and if you haven't eaten it, I'll give you a second one. And you'll be able to have both. What happened in that study, he tells me, was some of the kids, immediately when the researcher left the room, inhaled the marshmallow. It's a marshmallow, they're 5. Others sat in their seat and wiggled and were going around their hands and were just going like this, waiting for the 20 minutes, right? Others sat passively and waited for the 20 minutes. And when the 20 minutes was up, said, if I wait another 20 minutes, do I get another one? And he said they followed those children throughout their lifetime. And they found that the biggest predictor of success wasn't their SAT scores, their grade point average. It was who was able to delay gratification in the marshmallow test. So as you go through your career, Chris, always remember, it's not about today. Take a long-term view. Build those relationships. Delay your gratification. And that will be the biggest predictor of your success. The final thing he taught me was this. We went to a basketball game, an NBA game. And one of the owners of the company owned the NBA team. So my client goes to the NBA games a lot, and we have floor seats, as you can imagine. We walk into the stadium arena or whatever, and there's the person who takes your ticket or scans it or whatever. My client knew his name. And he knew the name of his wife, and he knew the name of his kids. And he gave him a hug. And they had a conversation. Then we made it to our seats. The same thing happened with the food vendor. New food vendor's name, knew her family, knew her kid's name. And I said to him, after the night was over, when he said to me, he got me a jersey that was signed and all that kind of thing. He said, what do you take away from this? What impacted you the most? What did you like the most? And I said, that you knew the name of the ticket taker, that you knew the name of the vendor who sold you food. Because you don't just know the general manager's name and the coach's name and the player's name. You know the name of all the people. These people matter to you. They know you, you know them. It isn't about whether you're the ticket taker or whether you're the head coach. It's about you're a person. And that's who he was. A person who other people mattered to. And he taught me that. So when I go out, and I'm with clients or I'm with others, I see and look and observe. Do they say hi to the people who brought us coffee? Do they talk to them? And so, in my work, on a day-to-day basis, of course I know the names of my lawyer colleagues who work with me. I know the names of their spouses, and I've had dinner with them, etc. I know the names of their children. But what about our file clerk? Do I know her name? Becca is her name. Do I know her husband's name? David. Children. 3. Do I know their ages? I do. He taught me that. And so I've always remembered, because of him, that I shouldn't just know the chairman of the law firm's name. I should know everyone's name. Everyone's family. And he taught me that. Case study number 4. Mr. and Mrs. Fortunate. 40-year-old husband and wife, 3 kids. Wife's family's done some estate planning for her benefit, and the dad's company is being pursued by a third party. This is in 2012. Why did all these things happen in 2012? I don't know. So the existing estate plan, there was a revocable trust that had about $80 million in it. There was a 1996 irrevocable trust that, of course, goes outright to her. Don't you just want to jump up and down? $165 million in it. And some of that 80 was already from one of the distributions from that trust. And then there was an irrevocable South Dakota Dynasty Trust that was an IDIC that had about $311 million in it. That's what they already had. She came to me with this. And the irrevocable trust went outright. And so I did what I always do. Here's where your stuff goes, family, IRS, charity. She said, any issues or concerns? I said, well, I do have a few. Outright distributions, and I explained that. Growing estate tax exposure. Worried about the wealth of the future generations, that's an issue. And you don't have any control here. What happens in 2012 is a third-party offer comes along. And in an estate planning meeting, she says to me, just like matter-of-factly, oh, my dad told me that he got an offer from the company, but it was too low, and they're not going to sell. I said, whoa. You got an offer for your family company. Yep. Was it in writing? Uh-huh. A real offer? Yeah, a real offer. It's from a publicly traded company. It's a whole big thing. But it's too low, so why are you asking about that? And I said, well, that's great. She said, no, it's too low. I said, no, not for that reason, but this creates a great opportunity for us. And she said, why? And I said, well, first of all, we should redo your core documents because you have outright distributions, and that's just crazy. She said, okay, well, we'll do that. I said, but look, if this valuation comes in, or if this offer comes in low, then this creates an opportunity for us to argue that the company's not worth a whole lot, which gives us an opportunity to do some estate planning when the company's value is low. And if the IRS challenges that, we have a piece of paper that says, hey, this is what a third party thought it was worth. That's nice ammunition on top of an appraisal. I like that. She said, you like that it was low? I said, well, weirdly in estate planning, I like it when things are low. Now later I want them to be high, but right now I want them to be low. So yes, this creates an opportunity. She says, well, hey, my father's attorney has contacted us and said, you know, now that we're starting to get offers and we may sell the company at some point, he wants all the stock consolidated inside of a voting trust. So he wants all my shares, whether it's in my revocable trust, the 96 trust, or the Dynasty Trust, all to trade in the shares for a voting trust certificate. But my father's going to have the vote. Okay. I said, here's an idea. You know that 96 trust that goes outright at tiered ages? Yeah. I said, I really want that stuff out of there now. She says, yeah, let's get the money out of there now. I'm like, no, not to spend. Not to spend. I want to do some planning with it because the value is low. She said, well, but the trust doesn't allow for the money to come out soon. And I said, well, if the trust doesn't allow for the money to come out soon, then we should change the trust. And she said, I don't know much, but it's an irrevocable trust, and that, my father tells me, means you cannot change it. And I said, well, the funny thing is, this day and age, things don't mean what they used to. So irrevocable doesn't mean irrevocable. Can't change it doesn't mean you can't change it. There's a lot of different ways you can change things that you can't change. What? Yeah, we can, do something called a non-judicial settlement agreement to prematurely terminate the trust. What does that mean? We can end the trust. How? We get everyone to sign a piece of paper. Can you make that piece of paper? Turns out I can. And so we did, and we terminated that trust. And then what did we do? We did what we always do. We set up a new IDIC. Couple of them. What we did here was, first one, we said, hey, you got this $10 million gift exemption. We ought to set up an IDIC, and we ought to at least get that stuff out of your estate. Great, let's do that. She's the grantor, her husband is a trustee, beneficiaries are the kids. Then, I said, now here's the thing. You still want access to this stuff. So when I terminate this 96 trust, and you got a whole bunch of stuff in your name, you still want access to it. I do. But you don't want to pay estate taxes on it. I don't. And we do think it's going to appreciate over time. We do. And we do think the value is low now. We do. How about we have your parents set up an irrevocable trust, and we'll make it a grantor trust to you? She says, you mean to them? I said, no, I mean to you. She said, we got one that is to them. I said, no, I mean to you. Wait a minute. He's going to set up an irrevocable trust, and it's going to be a grantor trust to me. Yes, beneficiary defective. Irrevocable trust, or a 678 trust if we want to get all lawyer-like. So we did. He sets it up. The investment trustee, we bifurcated the trustee jobs into an investment trustee and a distribution trustee. The investment trustee is her. The distribution trustee was an independent party. We also had our transaction trustees, or two trustees, and of course she's the beneficiary. We had a trust protector, lots of different parties in this, and she's got a power of appointment over spouse and descendants. Generations giving exempt GST to her. And as you all know, we won't get into the details of it given time, this is a 678 trust. She's got a withdrawal right of the $5,000 that he gives to it. The withdrawal right lapses, but she has the power to borrow with adequate interest but without adequate security. Next, we obtained an independent appraisal. Remember, we had a bona fide third-party offer for the company. Now we got an appraisal for these minority interests and really voting trust certificates. We made a gift to that IDIT of the $10 million and change for the kids, and then we did a sale to the BIDIT. Step 1, core documents, check. Step 2, discount. Pretty nice that we had a valuation that was bolstered by a third-party offer, and then we got the appraisal, of course, of these voting trust certificates. We got some discount there. Step 3, move assets to irrevocable trust. Well, we did it in 2 ways. 1, an IDIT for the benefit of the kids, and number 2, we did a sale. We couldn't do a conventional sale to an IDIT because she still wanted the stuff. So what did we do? A BIDIT. Took back a promissory note. Kind of a big one. $161 million promissory note. So in undiscounted values, now we have 4 buckets. By the way, this approach, here's a piece of paper that shows you, here's what's in your revocable trust. It's a big promissory note. Here's what's in your dynasty trust that's been around for a while. Here's in the IDIT that you set up for your kids. That's the undiscounted value. And here's what's in your BIDIT. People get that. They understand it. And it is our job to explain it in a way that they do. Now, come 2017, just this year, sales talks are heating up. Third parties made a substantial offer for the company, family seriously considering the offer, and asked us, what does the math look like if we do the sale? And I said, well, on a pre-tax cash flow, really good. So I don't know if you guys remember the movie White Men Can't Jump. But there's a scene in that movie, and this happened in the meeting, so we go through this slide. And the husband of the client, so the son-in-law, sees these numbers, and he looks at me and he says, we're going Sizzler. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, have you ever seen the movie White Men Can't Jump? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, remember when they win the basketball game and they win like $100 and they're going to sell it by going to Sizzler? He said, looks like we're going to Sizzler. I said, I've never had my estate plan compared to affording Sizzler, but here's you could buy Sizzler. We obviously paid down the promissory note, and after you've paid the capital gains taxes, there's all kinds of money in these trusts. Again, we boil it down to really basic terms. $33 million still going to the IRS. And they say, well, that's one small problem, or maybe 33.4 million problems, right? The solution. The portfolio is going to generate taxable income about 3%, the investment advisor says. So we're going to refinance the note to the September midterm AFR just to give us some more time. They are going to Sizzler because they're apparently going to be spending $6.5 million a year, is what they said. They found this thing called a plane and a thing called a boat. And hopefully our meetings will be on the boat from now on. Anyway, the taxable earnings will be about $3 million a year. Payments on the note would be about $9.5 million. So this is no more complicated than any other normal IDIT situation. The portfolio generates a bunch of money, it goes to the IDIT, it pays down the note, she pays the taxes. Again, it's crazy that we can argue this is out of her estate for estate tax purposes forever, but in her estate for income tax purposes. I did point out, if you die first, what about your husband? Because he's really planning on going to Sizzler, right? And he's not a beneficiary of this stuff. She says, well, maybe what I can do is exercise my power of appointment and leave some of it to him out of the Biden. I said, great. She says, but this really is too much money. This isn't good for my family. She's talking about her. She has two daughters. And we talked about what can you do with that. And so we created a donor advised fund. Yes, that's the round of applause line. There you go. We created a donor advised fund, and here's why this made such a difference in this family. She needed something to do, and she needed something to believe in. She needed a purpose, and she didn't have it. Now, some key points in the plan are straightforward. One, we only represented the daughter, not the husband, and we made it clear on that. Dad had separate counsel, and the family members actually didn't get along, so everyone actually had separate counsel. I mean, I never really get to work with other lawyers, but in this one I did. The appraisal coincided with a third-party offer, which was really helpful. And on the trustees, we are believers in, having a distribution trustee and an investment trustee and a transaction trustee. But the most important piece, I'd say, was this. I had the fortune or misfortune, I'm not sure which, of giving a presentation like this one time to a group. And the speaker immediately before me was Lou Holtz. Go try to talk about estate planning and death after Lou Holtz. He gets you ready to run through a wall. I'm talking about IDITs. Seriously? Actually, it was even worse than that. He spoke, they gave him this huge pasta lunch. Then I spoke. But anyway, I got to watch him speak, and I got to meet him and spend some time with him. And one of the things that he said was, hey, look, everybody needs three things. Everyone needs someone to love, something to do, and something to believe in. This daughter, with this wealth, she didn't have something to do. She didn't have a job. And she didn't have something to believe in. And it was that donor-advised fund that has become her purpose. That is what she does every day. That's what she looks at. That's what she talks to her children about. The purpose of the donor-advised fund, of course, to make a difference in other people's lives. But what struck me here was the difference that it made in her life and in these children's lives. It was extraordinary. So Lou Holtz was right. Everyone does need those three things. I want to wrap up with the few minutes that we have left with a quick message about what I think our role is as advisors. I think, and I stole this a little bit from a Simon Sinek TED Talk that I saw one time. Many of you may have seen that, called Starting with Why. And it's about figuring out your why or figuring out your purpose. And I think in estate planning, and Meyer talked about this a little bit previously, I think it's more than IDITs and BIDITs, more than generation skipping and more than creditor and divorce protection. I think it's a simple purpose, and I think it's to help families. I think it's to help the families that we work with, the families in the community. And so I say to our folks all the time in our office, it's not about the tactics, it's not about the techniques, and it's not about the strategies. It's not. I want you to measure your day, I tell our folks all the time, in this. Did you help a family today? I hope that whether it was case study number 1 with that billionaire family, where the son ended up with a business he was working in and the daughter equalized with other stuff, and we dealt with the granddaughter who had mental health challenges, or whether it was with the Case study number 2 in the autocratic narcissistic personality disorder father. Or whether it was with case study number 3, where we got family meetings going. And we're helping this family change 10,000 lives. Or whether it's in case study number 4, where through planning and a donor-advised fund, this billionaire family has found something to do and something to believe in. I hope that we fulfilled our goal, our mission, our purpose of helping families. I say to our people inside our organization all the time, do not come to me and say to me, we picked up another client, they're going to pay us 50 grand. I don't want to hear it. Measure your days in terms of whether you helped a family. If you helped a family today, it's a good day. And if you didn't, come back tomorrow and figure out how to do that. That's not something you can fake. You either believe that or you don't. I believe we, collectively in this room, have a unique opportunity. We have the ability to be in the room with the wealthiest people in this country. People who can, as Meyer said, speak for those who don't have voices. We have the ability to be in the room with these families who are struggling, despite their wealth, with some of the very same issues that all of us struggle with. Our job is to help them, not through a bite it, not through an eat it, not through a family limited partnership, but being human beings and reaching out to other people. So on my wall, in our office, we have a few quotes. One of them I really like, from Teddy Roosevelt. And that's about, no one cares how much you know, till they know how much you care. I'm not the only lawyer who knows about family limited partnerships, generation skipping, planning, IDITs and BIDITs. All of you do. There's lots of good ones out there. Hopefully our V, all of our V's, is that we care. And people feel that. I also have a Maya Angelou quote up there. People will forget what you said. Hopefully not this morning. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We have an opportunity to make them feel peace. Somebody said to me one time, and I believe it, we're in the peace of mind business. We're in the peace of mind business. Help these families by giving them that peace of mind. And then the quote that hangs on the wall outside of the conference room we use is this one. Do all the good you can by all the means you can and all the ways you can and all the places you can and all the times you can to all the people you can as long as you ever can. You know what's interesting about that? I saw that quote in my client's office. He showed it to me. He turned it around and he taught me. It wasn't about me telling him about IDITs. It was about him telling me that for a purpose. So, as we leave here this morning with our obligatory picture of Willie McGee, my favorite cardinal, I hope that this morning we've not just focused on learning some tactics and techniques. I hope we haven't just focused on figuring out how to reduce the 40% estate tax. I hope that all of us, through organizations like the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation, through each one of our practices, through each one of our days, through each one of our lives, I really hope that we recognize we're uniquely situated to make a difference, to touch lives, to have an impact. You know things. You're in front of these clients. I don't care if they have $1 billion. They have grandchildren with mental health issues. Help them. They have strained relationships with their father. Help them. They lack purpose and don't know what to do. Help them. That is our job. That is our mission. And I hope if there's one thing you take away today, it is that. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks as always. Another great presentation. You had your free night at the Westin last night. Yes. You call it name card and when will we get?
Willie McGee, St. Louis Cardinals. call Morgan E. Jerish of Weaver. There you go.
Appreciate y'all coming and look forward to seeing you again next year.